Alright, so you may have seen a video that I released 2 days ago, I think it is right now, where I was fuffing around with Gara and I was trying to see how far I can push my new build, and some people were a little bit unimpressed by the damage it did. So I decided to tweak it a little bit, and instead of getting 1 million damage after about an hour, which is what the previous setup did, this one could get to 1 million in about 10 minutes. And that's every 10 minutes, by the way. It doesn't have to do anything with the actual Gara setup, that one remained pretty much the same with the exception that I threw on one more forma and changed the D in the aura slot into a dash so I can put in corrosive projection. The biggest change came in the form of a melee stat stick that I actually farmed a bunch of Kuva for, and I rolled a ribbon specifically for this setup. The reason why I didn't do this last time and I brought the Gerudo instead was because I honestly thought I would have enough damage scaling, so I thought that the healing from Gerudo would be a better choice, but it obviously wasn't. Now the ribbon I ended up with isn't perfect, but it's close, because what you want is generic damage, elemental damage, and then either puncture or slash, preferably puncture. Because those are the only stats that will help you scale the damage you get from shattering Gara's wall while you have Splinter Storm. Now the stat stick setup that is obviously on the Gazelle Machete is the Riven, Primed Pressure Point and Spoiled Strike, Buskill, and then a bunch of elemental damage, so North Wind, Molten Impact, Shocking Touch and Primed Fever Strike. And it doesn't matter what type of element or elemental combo you have, all that matters is that it's there. If you don't have a Riven, by the way, don't worry, because you can easily supplement it and do a setup like this, where you would have Prime Pressure Point, Spoiled Strike, Sundering Strike, Ogre Strike, and then the 4 elemental mods. It's obviously not going to be as strong as if you have a Riven in there, so you're not gonna get 32,000 damage every time you shatter the wall, but it's gonna be close enough. And the reason I would go for puncture mods, even though I went for slash mods on my actual setup, is because of the Riven. It rolled slash damage and you can scale one or the other. You don't want to scale both. You can only get the benefit of one or the other depending on what kind of shattering lash you cast to break the wall. If you just tap it, you're going to be using puncture damage, and if you hold it, you're going to be using slash damage. And the puncture version just feels a lot better and it's a lot faster as well. So the setup overall is still just as efficient as the previous one. It still has Streamline in there for additional efficiency, which will allow you to cast the whole combo 3 times before you run out of energy, which is really nice. And it still gives you almost 40 seconds to refresh Splinter Storm, though you do want to do it more often to stack damage faster. It's also still using Mending Splinter, so even as you go higher up in levels and the enemies actually start to hurt you through your 90% damage reduction, you can heal it fairly quickly. But the immense increase of the rate of stacking damage means that you can go much farther in a survival before the enemy armor outscales you. It also makes it so that it's not as big of a deal when you lose your Splinter Storm, because you can get to a decent amount of damage much faster, and it's also finally viable in Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. Now, it's not Sauron level of performance here, and you will need a weapon to help you out in the beginning before you stack some damage and to help you with nullifiers, but each zone gives you enough time to get to a decent level of damage so you can get through the zone comfortably. Now granted, it is a little bit harder if you don't have a Riven because the damage stacking is going to be so lower, but it's still doable. This is probably the best setup for farming the Grineer because they can't do an awful lot. Most of them will die from a single tick of your Splinter Storm if you're stacking it properly, and they're not doing that much damage either. And even if they do get some damage through that 90% damage reduction, you will heal it with Mending Splinters. But it's not just for the Grineer, it's good versus other factions too. You just have to be a little bit more careful. When it comes to the Corpus, I would probably take Mitre with the Neutralizing Justice Augment so you can one-shot Nullifier Bubbles. And if you want to use this to farm the Infested, you just have to make sure that you have a good start and you stack a lot of damage in the beginning of the mission before all the energy leeching starts happening. It's really not that bad because the Infested don't have armor, they don't have shield, so they take a crap ton more damage than the other factions. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say, so I thank you very much for watching. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video and you will enjoy this setup, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.